Ask yourself the damn question. Is winning the only thing to you?
Sports today are not just played on the field. They're played every day, online, all over the world, by sports fans just like you.
Don't you dare breathe. That won't get you anywhere. If you don't think you're a winner, you don't belong here.
The Star Fantasy League Show puts you in control of your own team. Find out who to sit, who to start, how to play, and have your daily fantasy sports questions answered with your host, Jonathan Sprung, and co-host SFL CEO Zach Stanley and Nick Steblenko. The Star Fantasy League Show is on the air now.
Hello, Radio Universe. Welcome to today's edition of the Star Fantasy League Show here on 105.5 The Team. I'm your host. I am not Jonathan Sprung, actually, as the intro cage man says every single day. I am Matthew Footer here, joined again by 3 days in a row, Mr. Jason Granger.
3 in a row. For those of you who are concerned about my well-being, I'm still here. I survived last night barely.
Yeah, he was kind of on a sports suicide watch to pretty much. I was hoping you were going to come in this morning so I wouldn't have to do the show by myself.
Yeah, I was debating just calling in and letting you do the show by yourself, but I couldn't let that happen.
I appreciate that. I would have had not much to talk about because I would have been talking with myself, and that's kind of weird in most social settings.
You could have had like a hand puppet or something, and
I could have done that, like Mr. Sacco from like wrestling or something like that. That's a good idea. Future show ideas right there.
Right, maybe I'll call in tomorrow.
Fair enough. But we're going to jump right in because we have actually a really action-packed sports show packed today. Lot going on. We're going to recap last night's game, and we got a lot of games going on tonight as well. And we're going to take a look into some of the future NHL games and the season coming up. So let's jump right into the atrocity of which was the misery
of me.
The misery of you.
As an A's fan.
Yeah, the American League wild card last night took place. If you didn't see the end, don't blame you. It was a very late ending. The Royals ended up losing to the Athletics 9-8 in 12 innings.
The Royals won.
Or excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm still under that impression that the A's won that game apparently. But
me too.
I kind of give us your take on what you saw out there.
Well,
as unbiased as you can be.
Yeah.
So
I mean, as a baseball fan, it had to be one of the best games ever.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable.
If you're a fan of either team, especially the A's like me, it's pretty devastating.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, this is why I hate the format, really. You play 162 games, you play a month of spring training, and it comes down to a one-game playoff, which
pretty much
is pretty stupid in my mind.
Yeah, I there's been talks about the past how they should really reward and you should feel better about yourself winning, like having the best record in each league compared to winning the World Series because it's 162 games versus I think the max you could play is 20 games, I think is a breakdown. So it's really a whole new season essentially.
Yeah, I mean, they really put the emphasis on winning the division, and you can see why last night. It was a rough one for me, definitely. I mean, it was only the second winner-take-all postseason game to go 12-plus innings since Game 7 of the 1924 World Series.
Oh, boy.
So it had that going for it. I think the only thing really missing from the game was a 13th inning Derek Jeter tribute. I think that's really all that was missing from that game.
Yeah, I'm surprised that TBS didn't really – I didn't see the whole game, but I watched most of it. I didn't see any kind of Derek Jeter talk in there, which is rare, even though the season's done.
Yeah, it needed to go maybe one more inning, I think. But I guess getting into the game, I mean, it was back-and-forth game, definitely a roller coaster ride. After, I think, obviously the A's went up early.
Yep.
Brandon Moss showed up. He hadn't done anything the whole second half. He hits a 2-run bomb. The Royals come back, tie it up. Then they take the lead 3-2, and I thought this game could be over. Shields is dealing. And I said to my friend, I think if the A's don't score in the 6th inning, we're done because obviously we know the Royals had their great bullpen. And then lo and behold, Ned Yost pulls Shields for Ventura, which was just a boneheaded move, really.
Yeah,
Everybody was hating on it. I couldn't believe at the time they're putting in Ventura, who just pitched on Sunday. He's never pitched. He's a rookie. He's coming in mid-inning, and then he just imploded, which was great to see. Obviously, the A's go up 5-3 at that point. Then they tack on 2 more, and it's looking good, 7-3 going to the 8th inning, and then the wheels just kind of fell off. John Lester had retired, I think, 12 in a row. And I was just saying, let Lester go the whole game. Let him go 9 innings.
Yeah.
I thought he could do it.
we talked about his postseason record yesterday, especially against the Royals. I mean, he's pretty much lights out. He's the guy you want. Last year, he won 2 games in the World Series for Boston. So who else would you rather have out there?
Yeah, he was cruising. I think Infante had a bunt single, which kind of broke up the streak there. The Royals were really trying to get into his head. Mm-hmm. I found this out yesterday, which is really interesting, that he hadn't thrown over to first base since April of 2013.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I did not. They were talking about how he's such a great postseason pitcher, and they kind of compared him to Andy Pettitte. The thing that was so different about those two guys is Pettitte was known for his pickoff move and keeping guys on the base. Lester could care less about the base runners. Once they get on, he really doesn't even know they're there, essentially. Yeah,
they showed it on a pregame show on MLB TV. I think Rajay Davis was the last guy he threw over to when he was on the Blue Jays.
Wow.
So obviously guys know once he starts to go to the plate, you can just take off. Mm-hmm. And the Royals took advantage of this. We said yesterday they led the league in stolen bases. Mm-hmm. They had 7 last night, which was tied for the most, I think, in a postseason game.
They also had 4 bunts, as we talked about earlier, which is pretty unheard of.
4 sacrifice bunts. Lester ends up allowing 6 runs. Mm-hmm. The A's bullpen, which has just been not good all year, it ends up coming down to that. They got the 1-run lead there in the 12th. 1 out, nobody on. They couldn't hold the lead. I kind of blame Melvin for his 12th inning bullpen management. He doesn't bring in Abad, the lefty, to face Hosmer. Hosmer almost knocks it out of the park. Mm-hmm. Then he brings him in to face one guy. I mean, obviously Royals tied it up. I don't know. He brings in Hamill, who I just couldn't stand all season, and there goes the game.
There it goes, right down the toilet. All your hopes and dreams.
Yeah, crushed once again.
We talked about yesterday how it was 6 straight game-deciding games that they have not won. It's now 7. The unlucky number 7.
Yeah, I mean, Bean went all in with these trades he made. I said I hated the Lester deal before it even went down. The A's lost their swagger, really. Now Lester's basically gone in the offseason. I think the A's are probably not going to see the postseason again for another few years at least. Mm-hmm. And really, I think Bean just has to go.
Yeah.
As an A's fan, I think he's got to take the blame for this one. Mm-hmm. I've seen rumors already today that he's talking about Dylan Donaldson, or there's rumors about that. And, I mean, Zamarja could be dealt. We'll see. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens, I guess, but it's not looking good for me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens on that side of the Bay Area. As we jump over to the other side, we have another game tonight. We have the National League wild card. We have the Pirates taking on the Giants. Pirates taking that on in Pittsburgh, of course, as the higher seed. We talked about this the other day. Baumgartner is starting for San Francisco. He's 18-10 with a 2.98 ERA. And Volquez is going for Pittsburgh. Not their top starter, but still a valuable guy that they could put out there, I guess.
Yeah, I had picked the Giants the other day, but I think I'm going to flip-flop. I'm taking the Pirates. I dug a little deeper. I'm changing my pick to the Pirates.
As long as the game doesn't happen, you're allowed to do that. You just can't do it tomorrow. So you can't come back and say, "Oh, I picked the Royals today." So
it's pregame. I think PNC is going to be electric. It was last year. They had the play-in game. They really got to Cueto. Looking at Volquez's numbers, in his last 10 starts, he's 5-0 with a 1.36 ERA, a 1.08 WHIP, and only 3 home runs allowed in 66 innings pitched. If you go back even further, in his past 17 starts, he's 9-1 with a 1.85 ERA. In his last 35 innings at home, he's only allowed 4 earned runs. Obviously, on the other side of the bound, you have Baumgartner, who has proven he's been there in the postseason. But he's been much better on the road compared to home. His road ERA is 2.22. His home ERA is 4.03. But the Giants lineup, I think, is worse than the Pirates.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. They still have the guys, Buster Posey, Hunter Pence, what's his name? Kung Fu Panda, Pablo Sandoval. But it's just something about that they don't really – nothing really. They have the experience being there before, but nothing really sticks out about their lineup.
And they lost Angel Pagan, who was a huge part of their lineup. They've had a much better record with him in the lineup. The Giants have won 7 straight postseason games, and they've won the last 2 World Series that ended in an even-numbered year. So we're in 2014. Can they make it 3 in a row? I don't know.
Those are those odd stats I always love.
Yeah, the Pirates are 51-30 at home, which was tied for the best in the NL as well.
Yeah, they are pretty clutch at home. I mean, San Francisco's coming in 4-6 in their last 10, but they did win their last 2 straight. Again, we talked about how the postseason is just a kind of a different beast. Looking at the Pirates roster, what I like about them is they kind of just pull guys off other teams' rosters, and they end up making them serviceable. You got Ike Davis on there. He couldn't cut it with the Mets. Russell Martin was kind of a disappointment for the Yankees. He's turned out to be something. I mean, even last year when they had Burnett throwing for them, they just seem to find guys and put them in and make them successful within the team unit.
Yeah, no, definitely they're a small market team. They kind of remind me of the A's, actually. I mean, they find these guys like Brandon Moss. Obviously, he was on the Pirates, I think. Yeah, definitely love to see the small market teams. I'm kind of hoping they do advance. They advanced last year. They couldn't make it out of the NLDS, I don't believe, but hopefully, I think.
Yeah, they'd end up playing the Nationals, so that'd be a great series. I think. So you switched to the Pirates. I think on Monday I did pick the Pirates as well.
You did, yes.
So I think I'm gonna stick with that. I do like the Pirates in this matchup. So hopefully we won't be 0-2 tomorrow, as we both picked the A's yesterday.
Yes.
But jumping into the other sport to wrap up for this first segment, we're going to talk about the best 3 NFL games this season. Yes, it is almost Week 5. The Thursday night game actually starts tomorrow night. Because it is Thursday, obviously. We're not going to actually really get into much of a fantasy breakdown at this point for these games. It's just kind of the 3 best games that we kind of see as the most appealing matchup for the weekend. There's a lot of games on the docket this weekend, which I really liked. What are your three games that you, if you can't see them, you really kind of want to see the highlights and kind of follow along?
Yeah, I think most of the intriguing matchups are in the late games on Sunday. You got the Cardinals, who are undefeated, against the Broncos. I'm interested to see how they do on the road there.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I'm looking at.
Yeah.
3-3 versus 3-3, or excuse me, 3-0 versus 3-0. Carson Palmer might be back, so.
Yeah, and then I'm interested to see how the Patriots respond at home against the undefeated Bengals. Are they going to show up? What's going to happen? Are the Bengals going to, go to 4-0? That's definitely one I'm going to be watching. Those are kind of the main 2. I didn't really have a third I saw at the top there offhand. But
I got a couple games. One of them is the Battle of Texas. Houston 3-1 versus Dallas, which is 3-1. If you had said a few weeks ago that this would be a top matchup for me, I would have said, no, you're crazy. But both teams ended up pulling out wins last Sunday. They looked very strong, and at least on the defensive side, Houston wasn't as successful on the offensive side, but Dallas pretty much put a beat down on New Orleans on Sunday Night Football. So
they did, yeah. And and the other one I'm looking forward to is definitely Alex Smith coming back to the Bay Area. Are the Niners going to abuse him, or what's going to happen there? So
yeah, the other game I had listed, it was Baltimore versus Indy. Indy's kind of turned things around. They started the season 0-2, and they're now 2-2. Baltimore looks strong with Flacco and Steve Smith Sr. So there's a lot of good games on the docket this weekend, a lot more than I thought would be Week 5. So coming out of the break, we're going to jump into John's mailbag for a couple questions, and we're going to ask some hockey talk here on the Star Fantasy League show on 105.5 The Team.
The Star Fantasy League show. Information is key to being a successful fantasy team owner, and the guys have all the updated info you need right now. Okay, fantasy sports fans.
There's a letter in your mailbox.
Time to dig into Donald's mailbag for your questions and comments.
Read the mail, read the mail, read the mail.
Jump in the game. Send your questions and comments to the Star Fantasy League's team by tweeting at SFL Show.
It's that time of the week. Donald's mailbag. Of course, he's not here to actually answer the mail, so we have to do it for him. The stacks and stacks that we get of it.
Yeah, all that mail. You still haven't named the mailbag, have you?
No, I have not.
Just going to give it to John
the whole time? This is kind of his baby. This is his project. This is his pet. So I don't want to take everything away from him. We've been kind of bad-mouthing him on the show this week. I ended the show yesterday telling him you shouldn't take fantasy advice from him. I don't necessarily mean that. It's all in good humor. But I do know how much he enjoys this session. He always is telling Nick and Zach how much he enjoys it. I mean, he talks about it when he's not on the radio, too. It's kind of weird, but... Yeah.
It's all he has, really.
It really is, unfortunately.
Sad.
What else does he do here besides Donald's mailbag? I'm not really sure.
Just goes through his mail.
He does.
All in his cave.
Stacks and stacks of it. He's like Scrooge McDuck. Instead of swimming through money, he's swimming through mail. But we only have a couple questions today, and we're going to jump into some hockey talk. So I'm kind of excited we don't have too much mail today to go through. So Scott G. writes in, what kind of impact does Cal Orton starting have on the Bills' skill players in regards to fantasy? This is an interesting question. As we all know, Cal Orton is going to be taking over for E.J. Manuel on Week 5. The skill guys I have listed here are Spiller, Jackson, Fred Jackson, Sammy Watkins, Robert Woods, and probably Mike Williams. There really isn't much people beyond that. So what's your thoughts on this?
I'm going to have to say none.
Okay.
Just because I think we've gone over the stats. I think E.J. Manuel and Kyle Orton, I don't know if they really have that much different of a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know, obviously Orton has the veteran kind of presence. He's been there before. But the one thing I'm interested to see is if Sammy Watkins is going to get more targets from Orton. If he's really going to kind of try and pound the ball into Watkins. I was really surprised that Manuel wasn't doing that. He didn't seem to be going to him that much.
No.
Watkins had that one game at home, but other than that, he really didn't do much. I don't know if that's because he was injured or what. He was still on the field. He just didn't seem to be getting passes. So that's the one thing I'm looking for.
Yeah, I kind of have this question rated on a week-to-week basis because, first off, we don't know how long Orton's going to be playing, obviously.
Yep.
The second thing is it's tough to judge a guy who just came in 4 weeks ago and doesn't really have the playbook probably necessarily learned to a full extent. He knows it, but he hasn't gone through many first-team progression, first-team reads and stuff. So I got to rate all the wide receivers actually a little bit lower just because I think he's not going to have that type of comfortability with them yet. I am going to rate the running backs a little bit higher because I feel like they're going to try, I hope, to focus on the run a little bit more. So more increased touches for those guys. I could see him using both of the backs as more of a security blanket as well. So I definitely think Spiller and Jackson get a little bit of a bump, maybe a slot or two, and the wide receivers probably definitely go down a bit.
Yeah, and I think Spiller probably maybe the most bump for this week, considering they're on turf. He's obviously, I think in his career, he's done a lot better on turf. Something like 5.5 yards per carry to like 4 something on grass. It's kind of I'm kind of sad that Zach's not here to dissect the Bills with you this week. I'm sure he's in Vegas just
he's dissecting
hating
himself.
life, right?
Yeah, he's dissecting himself in Vegas with every other person who thinks they're a critic out there.
It would have been entertaining, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of the consensus we have regarding the Bills' skill players at this point. Mike C. writes, the Cavs are projected to win 58.5 games this year, according to Westgate's Superbook. Do you think they win more or less? Who will win the most games in the NBA if not them? Well, I was looking at the odds, and I'll just kind of name the top 5 or 6 teams right after them. So you got the Thunder at 57.5, the Spurs at 56.5, Bulls and Clippers at 55.5, Warriors at 50.5, and then it kind of drops significantly beyond that. There's a couple teams at 49.5, but 58.5, more than 58.5 games is a lot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. I'm going to say more.
Okay.
I'm thinking 60 to 65. It depends, obviously, if they can stay healthy and how well they gel and their chemistry is. And early on in the beginning of this, as they start playing games together, I think we kind of saw that with the Heat as the big three, their first kind of go together there. The first year, they didn't really have it all working, and it took a little while. So it's going to be tough, I think, to get to 60, but I think they could do it.
Yeah, a lot of people think, which I think they are right on thinking this, that the Cavs have a better quote-unquote big three than the Heat did at the time, based on their experience and youth and things like that. I still think, though, that getting over 58.5 is going to be a little bit difficult. I actually don't predict they're going to win the East this year. I think they'll actually be second. I may be a little biased on this, but I do think the Bulls will end up taking – I think they did enough in the offseason to make themselves – I mean, even when the Heat were winning the championships, the Bulls were the top team in the Eastern Conference when Derrick Rose was healthy. They did win the East a couple years there. So I think the Bulls end up winning the East no matter what. Or having the best record in the East, I don't know if they're necessarily going to win the East, but having the best record. I think the Spurs will end up having the best record again in all of basketball. I can't go against them. They're so consistent.
Yeah, and they didn't lose anybody.
No.
They have their whole team back, basically. The four other teams that came to mind when you just said the question were the Spurs, Bulls, Clippers, and Thunder.
Clippers are interesting as well.
Yeah. I mean, the Western Conference is so tough. I don't think you can say any team in the West will really have the best record, knowing how bad the East is, especially now that the Pacers have lost Paul George, so they're kind of out of the mix. But I think it's going to be Bulls and Cavs there.
Definitely. When the Cavs last season, their win total was 33, and they had 49 losses. So they'd be making like a 27-game jump almost, a little bit less. And when he was there, they were averaging about 50.7 wins a season. So to jump up even more, granted, he's got a better supporting role at this point. I don't know if essentially one guy can pull the team up that much. So
it will definitely be interesting to see.
All right. Again, thank you for the questions for John Old's mailbag this week. As always, you can tweet us at SFL Show. We'll be happy to answer your questions on the air. You can always write on our Facebook page as well if you're so inclined. All right, time to talk a little bit hockey. Next couple of days, we're going to kind of break down each division, talk about each team for a couple minutes, talk about some possible fantasy impact players, and kind of decide who might take home Lord Stanley's Cup this year based on off-season moves or how guys have been looking through the preseason. So today we're going to start with the Atlantic Division of the Eastern Conference. It still is kind of weird to say that based on these teams that are in here.
Yeah, last year they realigned all the conferences. I have not been a fan of this format at all.
I haven't either. I like the three divisions and having less teams in your division and playing them way more times and stuff. I love the rivalry hockey personally.
Yeah. I'd also like to thank John Old for not being here so we can actually talk some hockey today.
Yeah, it's
this week.
Zach would probably allow it if he was here, but yeah, John Old he kind of rules all and says no.
He does.
No hockey.
Nick tries to get his hockey in every once in a while, and
that's all you hear. No.
John just doesn't have any.
He'd rather go through his mailbag and talk about that. So we're going to start with the top team that finished in the East last year, and that's the Boston Bruins. Bruins finished the season 54-19-9. Most of their guys are coming back this year. The only guy that they did lose that kind of helped contribute on the scoring end was Jerome McGinley.
Right. Ends
up going to Colorado, I believe. What's your take on the Bruins this year?
Well, yeah, they kind of had a disappointing finish after they won the President's Trophy. They lost to the Canadiens there in the conference semis. They still have Rask, obviously. He's the Vezina winner. Their top line there, Bergeron, Marchand, and Smith, was great. Combined for 75 goals, 91 assists. They're all back together. They didn't really make a ton of offseason moves. I know they re-signed Torrey Krug, and Riley Smith was...
Yep, Krug was just the other day, actually. So
yeah, so I still think that they're going to win the Atlantic for sure.
Yeah, I expect them to kind of repeat in that same role. Having Char on the back end, he's another year older. I think he's 37 or 38 now. Guy's still a beast. It doesn't matter. Lucic is... a beast up front. Having guys like Marchand and Krejci being able to contribute on the offensive end. They have such balanced scoring, and they're so tough to play against because of the style that they play. It's tough for anyone, I think, to overtake them, honestly. So I expect them to win that division as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are high on Tampa Bay as well this year.
And that's a perfect segue into the team that finished second last year. Tampa Bay Lightning finished 46-27-9 last year. Just a 1 point ahead of Montreal and a lot of points ahead of Boston. They're kind of returning, a lot of their top guys. They did acquire Ryan Callahan at the trade deadline last year.
Rochester,
yes, exactly. They in the offseason, they added a few guys. I believe Valtteri Filppula, if I'm not mistaken, left Detroit, and he's now down there. They have a lot of good players on the defensive end, including their goaltender, Ben Bishop, who's the tallest goalie in the league at 6'7".
Yeah, Vezina finalist last year. Obviously, Steven Stamkos will be back. He looks healthy. They also have another guy coming in, Jonathan Drouin. Have you heard about him?
Yeah, Jonathan Drouin.
He should be a front runner for the Calder Trophy. He was the third overall pick in 2013.
Yep.
He scored 213 points in 95 games the last 2 years in juniors. So he got cut last year from the team, but he should be there this year.
Well, the same thing has happened with the Sabres as well locally here. They drafted Mikhail Grigorenko very high, and he ended up playing a few games here and then getting sent back to juniors. And honestly, we're going to talk about the Sabres in a few minutes, but he's come out looking really well in the preseason. Sometimes these guys just need a few years to develop. But I expect Tampa Bay. I'm actually going to put them third in the division this year. Okay. I don't think they're going to get as high as they did last year, but I'm going to put them third in the division. I think they have all the scoring that can compete with the top teams in the league. But they did allow 215 goals last year, so it'll be interesting to see if they can shore up on the defense, and I don't know if they necessarily can do that.
Yeah, very young team.
Yeah, definitely. The team that I think will finish second is actually Montreal, who did finish third last year. They were 46, 28, and 8, so they finished 1 point behind Tampa Bay. They returned a lot of big scoring guys, Pacioretty, Pjanic, Eller, Galchenyuk. But they also added P.A. Parento, I believe, in the offseason.
In Colorado.
Yep. You have Markov and Subban on the back end, and, of course, Carey Price in the net. What's your thought on Montreal?
Yeah, they definitely need Carey Price to stay healthy. We saw that he went down in the conference finals to the Rangers. It really hurt them. They lost 4-2.
I really thought they were going to win that series, honestly.
I know. I liked him a lot. But he's definitely the huge piece on that team. He's got to stay healthy. They've got a lot of good pieces in place there. Obviously, they lost Vanek, Gianto to the Sabres. They traded Briere and Georges, who's also on the Sabres now.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, they did lose some veteran presence there, so it'll be interesting. They definitely have a younger team, but they have been there in the playoffs before. They've been successful, so having that really helps that postseason experience. So I expect them to be a lot better than they were last year. But coming out of the break, we're going to wrap up with the Atlantic Division and talking some hockey. You're listening to the Star Fantasy League Show here on 105.5 The Team.
Play fantasy sports for cash prizes. Join the top daily and weekly fantasy leagues in the country at starfantasyleagues.com. Now, back to the Star Fantasy League Show with Jonathan, Zach, and Nick, only on The Team.
You are wrong, Cage Guy. You are so wrong. We are not back with Jonathan, Nick, or Zach. We are back with Matt and Jason here on the Star Fantasy League Show on 105.5 The Team, talking some hockey. We're really throwing things for a conundrum here today.
Oh, yeah.
Different,
that time of the year.
Different hosts, sports we don't actually talk about much on here.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite times of the year as a sports fan.
It really is.
You have all three. You've got three major sports, and then you got basketball right around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, end of October hits, the World Series is starting, hockey's in full go, football's midseason, basketball's just starting. You can't beat it.
No.
So going in the break, we were kind of wrapping up the Atlantic Division of the Eastern Conference in the NHL. We talked about half the teams right now. We're going to talk about most of the teams that didn't make the playoffs, but one team that did still made the playoffs and still hanging around, even at their, a lot of old guys on the team. It was the Detroit Red Wings. Ended of the season 39, 28, and 15, just barely squeaking into the playoffs, tied with Columbus, actually, for the other spot.
Yeah.
Detroit brings back a lot of the same guys. I mean, you got Alfredsson, who was actually their leading scorer last year. I think he's 40 at this point.
I don't know if he's going to be returning. I think he might be gone, actually.
Okay, all right. So I don't have the most up-to-date hockey news, even myself. But you had Kronwall. You can add in Pavel Datsyuk. You got Franzen.
Zetterberg.
Yep, Zetterberg.
But, yeah, they have a lot of young guys as well. Nyquist, Sheehan, Tatar, Jerko. Yeah, they've made the playoffs for 23 straight years. We'll see if they make it 24. I know there's a lot of rumors if Babcock's going to be back next year. Is he going to re-sign this year? I think he's probably going to wait and see how this season goes before they kind of make a decision. I know they haven't re-signed him before the season starts, so that'll be interesting to see. They still have Jimmy Howard in net. I think they got a chance to squeak back in for 24 straight, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their stats last year, they were always kind of known for goal scoring, and they were one of the lower scoring teams in the Eastern Conference, which is rare to see from a team that has that mantra about themselves. But they really relied on Howard and the combination of him and Gustafsson in the back end. They have a very strong goaltending tandem, so it's kind of a shift now from that offensive to that defensive view.
Yeah, still even now, it's weird to see Detroit in the East. I was so used to them playing the Blackhawks so many years in the West. It's kind of painful as a
Hawks fan, you always had those
fan,
great matchups of Detroit, Chicago. Detroit, Colorado was always a great one that started in the 90s. So it is interesting to see Detroit. I mean, they are in the Eastern time zone, so it's only fair for them, I guess, to be in there. But it's like we said earlier, this alignment, it's kind of weird. I expect them to make the playoffs again this year. They'll sneak in, so most likely they'll get that fourth spot again. They could end up actually getting that fifth spot because it's the top three in each division, and then you can have two wild cards in each. So they could either get that fourth or fifth spot in that division. Finishing fifth in the division, though, was Ottawa at 37, 31, and 14. The Senators just barely missed the playoffs last year. They returned top guys like Carlson, Milan Mihalik, Bobby Ryan up there. Yep. They have a great goaltending duo of Anderson and Robin Lehner. So what's your thoughts on Ottawa?
They're kind of a messy situation, I think. They traded Jason Spezza to Dallas.
They did? Yep. I did know that. I didn't screw up on that end.
Yeah, so he's gone. They've got a lot of young guys on this team. I don't see them really having a great season. I think they'll probably finish a little lower than they did last year.
Yeah, I don't. They got at points last year. Craig Anderson's a guy wherever he's been gone, whether it's Colorado or Florida. He usually tends to get hot for a certain period of time, and then he kind of falters off, and then the team ends up shipping him out. So I could see Robin Lehner, who they traded for, I believe, for the last season, the year before, see him taking over that number one role.
Yeah, he should. I know Vegas has them 65-1 to win the Cup. Another team in the division they have ahead of them is Toronto at 45-1.
Who actually finished right behind them last year. Definitely a foe of Ottawa. Toronto was 38, 36, and 8. They're a really high-powered team. I was looking at their roster today. They have a lot of guys who they've picked up through free agency from different teams or who they've traded for, who teams weren't feeling were going to be successful in their team. And so far they haven't been a success for Toronto, but I feel like they have the great makeup of a really powerful team.
Yeah, Toronto is a city. They really want to win it, but they missed the playoffs 8 out of the last 9 years. They were in a position last year on March 14th. They were 9 points ahead of 9th place, and then they lost 8 straight games in regulation, and then 12 out of the last 14 and missed the playoffs by 9 points. So that's when they kind of blew it all up. They hired Brendan Shanahan this year as the team president. They still have Randy Carlyle there. He's on the hot seat. Their defense was just awful. I think last in the league, allowing 36 shots a game. Yeah. Obviously, they have a great offense. So.
Yeah, they got guys like JVR, James Van Riemsdyk. You got Phil Kessel up there, Lupul, Nazem Kadri. They definitely can score goals. It's more on the back end. I feel like their defense can be a little slow and ragged at times.
Vanoof's on his way out. They don't really have much depth there. So
no, I think their best defenseman, honestly, is probably Jake Gardner.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be the best one wrapping up the back end. And then who knows what's going to happen with the goaltending situation between Jonathan Bernier and James Reimer. That seems to be always the same question in Toronto is goaltending.
Yeah, they'll probably split time again this year.
But finishing right behind them last year, and by finishing right behind, I mean they were really far behind them, was the Florida Panthers at 29, 45, and 8. Florida made some pretty interesting moves in the offseason. One was bringing back Roberto Luongo.
They did. They traded for him. Dale Talon, this might be his last hurrah there as GM. He's trying to get as many guys in there as possible. They got a new head coach. They brought in ex-Hawk Dave Bolland. We'll see if Jonathan Huberdeau, who won the Calder in 2013, if he kind of returns to form. He had a bit of a sophomore slump there. Vegas actually has them at 65-1, same as Ottawa, which was kind of high, I thought.
Yeah, so, that's pretty good odds. I would take that over Ottawa all day because I would take Ottawa over that because that they have a good team. I mean, they got Thomas Kopecky. They got the number 1 pick this year, Aaron Ekblad, to add on the defensive side. It'd be interesting to see if he stays or goes back to juniors. I believe he played in the U.S., so he could be sent down. But I don't see much from Florida this year. They'll definitely be improved with Luongo on the goaltending end, but I don't see them really sniffing the playoffs at all.
No, bit of a long shot there.
And to wrap out the division, the local team, my team, the Buffalo Sabres, finishing the year 21, 51, and 10, scoring the least amount of goals by any team since the 1950s, I believe.
Ouch.
157 goals last year. And they finished behind Florida. They were almost 40 goals behind Florida, and they weren't even the second worst goal team. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Sabres this year. I want an outside perspective on this first, and then I'll kind of give my 2 cents on the situation.
Yeah, I really like what they have going on there. They've kind of blown it up. They've gone for the youth movement. I think GM Tim Murray, he's made some great moves. He's made some great trades. They picked up a lot of draft picks. They're really gotten the youth movement going on there. And they've added veteran presence. Obviously, we know they brought in Brian Giunta, Rochester boy. They've got Georges on the back end. They re-signed Molson, who I really like. They've got their young guys, Grigorenko. It'll be interesting to see if Reinhardt's going to actually make the team this year, their second overall pick.
Yeah, he hasn't been looking that great in preseason. He doesn't look that great in practice. What's great about the NHL is he's young enough where he can't play in the AHL, so he'd have to be sent back to juniors. But they have a rule where you can play up to 10 games to start the season. And it doesn't have to be consecutive. It's just you can't play 10 games. And you can kind of get like almost a trial look at him before you want to send him back. So I feel like they're going to end up doing that with him. They're obviously built to not fail but not be super competitive this year in hopes to still land at the top of the draft next year. So
yeah, I mean, if you're a Sabres fan, you kind of want to hope to get that first 2 picks next year. You've got Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel. They're kind of the consensus top guys. They're centers there. I don't think Reinhardt's going to make the team. I think Nolan usually kind of sticks with his vets a little bit, so we'll see.
Yeah, I expect them to be about the same as they were last year. I actually was talking to one of my friends later today, and I said they're going to improve by 6 points. So whether that's 6 overtime losses or 3 wins or a combination of that, I don't think they can be as bad as they were last year because they do have some more stability, first of all in the coaching and with the players that they had there. So, 6 points would put them up to 58. If they did that, it still probably would be the worst team by a lot next year. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, they re-signed or they signed Cody Hodgson and Tyler Ennis long term. I know Giannis said that he doesn't expect to lose a lot this year, which is nice to hear. But on the other hand,
you're not built.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. So that's going to wrap up our hockey talk today. I'm very happy that we actually got that in there. So to jump back into football, we're going to kind of do a mini fantasy breakdown of a few games that are coming up this weekend. We'll do about half of them today. We're going to do the rest of the half tomorrow. We won't do the Thursday night game as we will do that tomorrow. We'll talk in good length about that. And then we'll talk about the Monday night game next Monday. Or whoever's actually hosting the show will probably talk about the Monday night game. We're going to be sent back to the bench, I'm sure.
Sent back to the minors.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But the first game we're going to start with is the Chicago Bears versus the Carolina Panthers. Vegas has this at a 45.5 over/under. Who do you like in this for daily fantasy? Again, we're going to try to talk about daily fantasy because you can always play on Star Fantasy Leagues at all time with these games.
I like Jay Cutler. Carolina's been giving up big games to opposing quarterbacks this year. We look at Flacco had a big one last week. Roethlisberger before that. Also Matt Forte. Carolina's allowed the most receptions to running backs last season and have already allowed 20 this year. Forte's got 24 catches. I think he might have a nice day. And the other side of the ball, I like Kelvin Benjamin. Bears secondary's banged up. We saw what Nelson and Cobb did last week. Aaron Rodgers kind of torched them a bit. And we mentioned Darren Reeves as a value play for Carolina as running back.
Yeah, I like most of those guys. I like Jeffrey a lot in this game because he's about $2,000 less than Brandon Marshall, and I think he'll have very comparable numbers to what you'll see from Marshall, so you might as well save the money. Benjamin coming in at about $13,453. That's a nice value play, and I say value loosely, but a nice play for a guy who's basically a number one, almost is sitting, I believe, top 10 in receiving right now in the whole NFL. So those are two guys. And a guy, if you're looking for a tight end who still probably have a nice game, is Greg Olsen at around $11,000. So those are the guys I like for Carolina.
Martellus Bennett's actually higher than Marshall and Jeffrey, which I was kind of surprised to see.
Yeah.
But he's already got 29 catches. So.
Yeah, he is leading the tight ends among receiving at this point. Is there anyone else that you like in this game, or do you like either one of the defenses, or is it kind of restricted to at this point to those?
I think it's just pretty much those guys. I don't like Cam Newton.
I don't either.
And yeah, that's all I have to say about that, I guess.
Yeah, there really isn't much to say about this game because both teams are kind of bad at this point this season. So it'll be interesting to see what shakes out. Two bad teams playing each other. Might actually turn out to be a good game. Who knows? But coming out of the break, we're going to talk a few more games, giving some fantasy breakdown. And you're listening to the Star Fantasy League Show here on 105.5 The Team.
You're listening to the Star Fantasy League Show. Contact the StarFantasyLeagues.com guys via Twitter at SFL Show.
We are back on the Star Fantasy League Show here on 105.5 Your Team. I am your host, Matthew Footer, again joined not by Nick or Jason or even John. I am joined by Jason.
I'm harnessing all three of their spirits.
You are?
Yes.
You're doing a very good job at it as well.
Thanks. Thanks, you too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It is my birthday today. I am 18 years old. I am legal to work here. I wasn't legal before. That's why I never actually worked there before.
But you still can't drink.
No.
Legally.
Legally.
Okay.
But again, before the break, we were actually talking about breaking down a few games for this weekend in the NFL, mainly dealing with daily fantasy. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because we work for a fantasy sports company.
Yes.
And it's called Star Fantasy Leagues. And I believe you can play fantasy games at all times on there across different sports, especially football, the sport we're actually talking about.
Yes, football is the big boy.
It is.
Yes.
And we have some great news this weekend. We have over $16,000 in guaranteed money for these games.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, so if you don't know what guaranteed contests are, even if they don't fill, we still pay out all the money.
Wait, you're saying like I could be the only one in there and I could win all the money?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And did you know also as well that we have a promo code right now that gives away free money? So you can be in those contests, win a lot of money, and you get free money. That's awesome. And
yes.
that promo code is FREE14, FREE14. You get 100% up to $2,000 and an $11 credit in your account. It's easy as that.
Beautiful.
Perfect. All right, let's jump back into a couple games real quick. We're going to do the rest of the games over the next couple days, but before the break, we were talking about Chicago, Carolina. We're going to jump into another NFC. Actually, this is an NFC-AFC battle. It's the Battle of Texas, a game we talked about earlier. Houston versus Dallas. Who do you like in this game, fantasy-wise?
On the Houston side of the ball, I'm looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick. Dallas is 25th against the pass. Breeze just threw for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns. They could be behind a bit and have to throw. If you look at their wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, Andre Johnson's still really low at 10,500 on Star Fantasy Leagues. He's due for a breakout game if he's healthy, I think. Mm-hmm. He has 22 catches. You got to love DeMarco Murray. He's just tearing it up, even though I'm not sure I'm going to pay up for him. He's the 4th highest salary. Mm-hmm. But he should have a big day. And Des Bryant has scored in 3 straight games. So.
Yeah, that's great. I have all those guys. Murray, I was debating the same thing. I'm like, well, should I put him in? I figure he's going to score, but do I really want to put that much money into one guy? And that's all about what daily fantasy is.
Yep. If you can find any value guys, maybe you can fit them in your roster.
Definitely. I really love the Fitzpatrick and Andre Johnson one. You can get those guys in your lineup for about $26,000. That's a lot of production right there for $26,000.
Yeah, and I think that should be a decently high-scoring game.
Yeah, one guy I just want to add in there is Jason Witten. I don't think he'll have a huge game, but he's always productive enough, and he's only listed about 7,400. So if you're looking for a value tight end, I think he's a guy you put in there. The last game we're going to kind of talk about today is Buffalo versus Detroit. There's actually a lot of guys I like in this game,
really?
Surprisingly, with 2 good defenses, but this is based on their values because I think a lot of guys are valued low this week.
Yeah, I noticed Kelvin Johnson down at 14,800.
Yeah,
this
that's
could be
crazy.
This could be the lowest price you'll find him at all year. He hasn't scored since week 1. If he's healthy, he could go off. He could take a flyer on Kyle Orton at 9,000 minutes.
I had him listed there. I have both of the running backs. Spiller's only listed about $1,000 more at $12,000. I got Golden Tate. He's listed at $10,000. Right. You saw what DeAndre Hopkins did last week against the Bills. So I really like the number 2 option. I even like Eric Ebron for about $5,000.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you haven't played before, you definitely want to check out our daily games on starfantasyleague.com. Again, we are giving away free money. Use the promo code FREE14, and you can play pretty much any game right now. You did say we were possibly doing playoff baseball, right?
Yeah, we'll have that started, I think, in a couple days here.
Perfect. Because I know I don't want to play football at all times. I want to play different sports. Yeah. But if you're looking for any type of sports outlet, you can play here on starfantasyleagues.com. Take it easy, folks.